Peppa's lunch. Peppa and George are helping Grandpa Pig pick fruit and vegetables from his garden. Peppa, do you like tomatoes? Asks Grandpa Pig. Yes, Grandpa, Peppa replies. George, do you like tomatoes? Asks Grandpa. No, George replies. Grandpa Pig shows Peppa and George some nice green lettuces. Do you like lettuce and cucumber? Asks Grandpa Pig. Yes, Grandpa, replies Peppa. No, replies George. Oh dear, says Grandpa Pig. George does not like tomatoes or lettuce or cucumber. What vegetables do you like? Asks Grandpa Pig. Chocolate, says George. Peppa, George, and Grandpa Pig take what they've picked to Granny Pig. Oh, lovely fresh tomatoes, lettuce, and cucumber, says Granny Pig. Delicious! Granny Pig washes the tomatoes and vegetables, then chops them up to make a salad. George definitely does not like salad. Granny Pig finishes making lunch while Peppa and George wash their hands. Grandpa Pig, can you call everyone in for lunch? Asks Granny Pig. Lunch! Shouts Grandpa Pig, ringing his bell. Granny Pig has made pizza with salad for lunch. Peppa and George like pizza. Talk in, everyone, says Grandpa Pig. Everyone likes pizza. Mommy Pig puts some salad on George's plate. George does not look happy. George, try this lovely tomato, says Mommy Pig. Yuck, says George. Try a piece of lettuce, George. It's yummy, says Mommy Pig. George does not like salad. He is too full to eat anymore. George, are you too full to eat any tomatoes, lettuce, or cucumber? Asks Grandpa Pig. George nods. Oh well, you won't want any of these chocolate cake then, says Granny Pig. Chocolate, cries George. George, you will have to eat your salad first, says Mommy Pig. George eats all of his salad and chocolate cake. Grandpa Pig laughs. George seems to have got his appetite back. George likes chocolate cake. Everyone likes chocolate cake. Pedro is late. Peppa and her playgroup friends are going on a trip to the museum. Are we ready, children? Asks Madame Gazelle. Where's Pedro? I bet he's still in his pajamas, says Susie Sheep. He's always late, says Peppa. Pedro Pony is fast asleep in bed. Pedro likes sleeping. Pedro, wake up, says Mommy Pony. You're going to be late for the playgroup trip. Pedro yawns and gets out of bed. Okay, Mommy, he says. When Pedro and Mommy Pony arrive at playgroup, no one is there. They jump back into their car and drive towards the museum. Stop the bus, cries Mommy Pony. Pedro is here. Miss Rabbit stops the bus and Pedro jumps on board. By the time they get to the museum, it is quite late. Mr. Rabbit is locking the museum's door when the bus arrives. Hello, Mr. Rabbit, says Madame Gazelle. We would like to see the museum, please. I was just about to close, says Mr. Rabbit, but I suppose I can give you a quick tour. Hooray! Everyone cheers. First, Mr. Rabbit shows the children a room full of clothes that belong to kings and queens. Pedro likes to look at things for a long time. This is interesting, he says, stopping to look at a shiny crown. The class follow Mr. Rabbit through the museum. Here are all the giant dinosaur skeletons, says Mr. Rabbit. They are all very old and very interesting. The children all gasp as they look around. No one notices that Pedro is getting left behind. The last room on the tour is the space room. This room is dedicated to space, rockets, and all that sort of thing, says Mr. Rabbit. Mr. Rabbit needs to lock up the museum, so he shows everybody to the exit. But Pedro is still inside the museum. Madame Gazelle goes to find him. Madame Gazelle eventually finds Pedro, but when they get outside, the school bus has gone without them. "Oh dear," says Mr. Rabbit. "Have you missed the bus?" Mr. Rabbit is about to get into his car to go home. "Mr. Rabbit, I am a teacher and I need your car," says Madame Gazelle. "Jump in, Pedro." Madame Gazelle takes Mr. Rabbit's car. "Don't worry, Pedro," says Madame Gazelle. "I know a shortcut." "Hello, dogs," says Pedro. Soon they are back at the playgroup. "No one is here," says Madame Gazelle. "Oh no," says Pedro. "Am I late again?" Just then, the school bus turns up. "No, Pedro," says Madame Gazelle. "I think for once you're early." "Pedro is early," cheers Peppa, jumping off the bus. "Yes," says Pedro, "and you are late, slow coaches." Pedro decides he likes being early. Everyone likes being early. Peppa in George's garden. Daddy Pig is sitting in his favorite sunny spot reading a newspaper. "What a perfect day for doing nothing," says Daddy Pig. "The only thing that could make it better would be a cup of tea." He goes inside the house to make one. Grandpa Pig has come to see Peppa and George. "You're going to have your very own flower garden," he tells them. Peppa and George are very excited. "We need a nice sunny spot to plant your seeds," says Grandpa Pig. Grandpa Pig finds the perfect sunny spot and starts to dig Peppa and George's garden. When the garden is ready, Peppa and George will plant their seeds. "Oh," guesses Daddy Pig. "Oh," guesses Daddy Pig. "What's going on?" "We're making a But that's where I sit in my chair and read newspaper. Flowers are more important than chairs and newspaper." "Oh," guesses Daddy Pig. "What's going on?" "We're making a flower garden," says Peppa. "But that's where I sit in my chair and read my newspaper," cries Daddy Pig. "Flowers are more important than chairs and newspapers," says Peppa. It is time to plant the seeds. "Look, Daddy," cries Peppa. Peppa has lots of flower seeds. George only has one flower seed, but it is a big one. Some birds have come to see what Peppa and George are doing. They start to eat the seeds. "Shoo, shoo," calls Peppa. "Leave our flower garden alone." Daddy Pig gets some water to help the seeds to grow. As soon as they see Daddy Pig, the birds fly away. "Daddy's scared of birds," cheers Peppa. Grandpa Pig laughs. Daddy Pig looks like a scarecrow. "Peppa, George, bath time," calls Mommy Pig. "But what if the birds come back?" asks Peppa. "Don't worry, Peppa. I'll make sure the birds don't eat the seeds," says Daddy Pig. The birds come back again. Luckily, Daddy Pig is there to scare them away. "Shoo, shoo, naughty birds," cries Daddy Pig. Daddy Pig guards the seeds until the birds have gone to bed. He's a very good scarecrow. It is 1 week later. "Peppa, George, come and look," calls Daddy Pig. "The seeds have grown," says Peppa. "My flowers are so pretty." "And George's plant is very tall," says Daddy Pig. "It's a beanstalk," cries Peppa. "It goes all the way up to the giant's castle." "Ho ho, no, Peppa," says Daddy Pig. "It's a flower, but it does go quite high." "George's flower is taller than our house," says Peppa. "George has grown a sunflower," explains Grandpa Pig. Sunflowers are very tall plants. Well done, George, says Grandpa Pig. And well done, Daddy, says Peppa. You're a great scarecrow. Numbers. Peppa and her friends are at playgroup. Today we'll be learning all about numbers, says Madame Gazelle. Does anybody know what numbers are used for? We use numbers to count, says Peppa. That's very good, Peppa, says Madame Gazelle. Numbers are used for counting. Now, who would like to try some counting? Pedro Pony counts to 4. Rebecca Rabbit counts all the way to 7. Excellent, Pedro and Rebecca. After 7 comes 8, 9, and 10, says Madame Gazelle. It is playtime. Rebecca, Zoe Zebra, Susie Sheep, and Peppa all like to skip. I like sand, I like sea, I like Susie to skip with me, sings Peppa. I like ping, I like pong, I like Zoe to skip along, sings Susie. Let's see who can skip the longest without stopping, says Zoe. I'll count, says Rebecca. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Peppa is out. 6, 7, 8, Susie's out. 9, 10, Zoe is the winner. Pedro is hula hooping. I can do 1,000,003 hula hoops without stopping, says Pedro. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He has stopped hula hooping. I'm a bit tired, says Pedro. I'll do the rest later. Millie Elephant has a special way of hula hooping. She hula hoops with her trunk. The hoop spins round and round and round. It is too fast to count. I think that was about 100, says Susie. George wants to play leapfrog. Leapfrog, everybody, cries Peppa. Richard Rabbit, Edmund Elephant, Susie, Rebecca, Peppa, Emily, Candy Cat, Danny Dog, Zoe, and Pedro line up. There are 10 children for George to jump over. George begins to jump and everyone counts along. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. George has jumped over everyone. George is very good at playing a leapfrog. Now, playtime is over and the children must return to the classroom. Daddy Pig has come to collect Peppa and George. He is very early, but Madame Gazelle doesn't mind. Don't worry, you can join in our game, she says. Richard and Edmund, please get the extra long skipping rope. Is everybody ready? Let's count to 10, says Madame Gazelle. 1, Daddy Pig is skipping. 2, now Peppa is skipping too. 3, Susie joins them. Madame Gazelle plays her guitar as the children join in one by one. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Count Daddy Pig and the children. It is much easier to count to 10 if you are playing a game at the same time. Peppa's painting. Peppa and George are going to do some painting. They lay out Daddy Pig's old newspaper. Hooray! Let's start painting, says Peppa. Peppa grabs her paintbrush and dips it into the yellow paint. Then George puts his hands into the blue paint. Silly George, says Peppa. Big children do not put their hands in the paint. George loves painting with his hands. He prints his paint-covered hands all over the paper. Peppa loves painting with her hands too. Hee hee, Peppa giggles. She makes yellow patterns over her paper. Daddy Pig is holding half a potato. "What's this?" he says. He dips it in paint and stamps it onto some paper. "Who knows what I'm painting?" asks Daddy Pig. "It's a flower," cries Peppa. Daddy Pig finds his old painting things to show Peppa and George. "Why are you wearing that silly hat?" asks Peppa. "It's my beret. It helps me paint," says Daddy Pig. "I'm going to paint the cherry tree." Peppa and George watch Daddy Pig painting the cherry tree. "What lovely green leaves," says Daddy Pig. Daddy Pig mixes green and red paint to make brown for the tree trunk and the branches. "Can I paint the cherries?" asks Peppa excitedly. "Yes, Peppa," says Daddy Pig. "Dip your finger in the paint and dot it onto the tree." Peppa paints 3 red cherries. "Well done, Peppa," says Daddy Pig. Now it is George's turn. "What a great painter you are, George," says Daddy Pig. "The painting is finished." "Hooray!" says Peppa. All of a sudden, some ducks run over and splash into Daddy Pig's paint. "Shoo, naughty ducks!" shouts Peppa. Oh dear, the ducks have made tracks all over the garden and used up all the paint. Mommy Pig comes to see what all the noise is about. "The ducks used up our paint," says Peppa. But Mommy Pig spots something. The tracks in the garden make the grass all colorful. "Hooray!" Everyone cheers. "Daddy Pig, your painting is perfect," says Mommy Pig. "Ho ho, I'm an expert at painting," says Daddy Pig. "And so are the ducks," says Peppa. George's friend. Peppa and her friends are having lots of fun at the playground today. Peppa is on the roundabout with Susie, Sheep, and Danny Dog. George is playing in the sandpit with Mommy Pig. Rebecca Rabbit and her little brother Richard Rabbit arrive. Richard has brought his toy dinosaur. "Hello everyone," says Rebecca. "Please, can I play on the roundabout too?" "Hop on, Rebecca," says Daddy Pig. "Let's go really, really fast," says Rebecca. Richard wants to go on the roundabout with his big sister. Peppa sighs. "If Richard gets on, it means we can't go fast." "Richard, perhaps you'd like to play with George instead?" says Mommy Rabbit. "No," says Richard. "George has a dinosaur just like yours," says Mommy Rabbit. "Let's go and see." Richard is the same age as George, and they both love dinosaurs. "Richard wanted to see George's dinosaur," says Mommy Rabbit. "Grrr, dinosaur!" roars George. George and Richard both giggle. "George, can Richard play with your dinosaur?" asks Mommy Pig. "No," says George. "Richard, can George play with your dinosaur?" asks Mommy Rabbit. "No," says Richard. George and Richard do not want to share their dinosaurs. Mommy Rabbit gives both dinosaurs to George. George laughs and Richard starts to cry. Then Mommy Pig gives both dinosaurs to Richard. Richard laughs and George starts to cry. "George and Richard always cry when they play together," says Peppa. "Can you two big girls teach them how to play together?" asks Mommy Rabbit. Peppa and Rebecca take George and Richard to the sandpit. The girls show their brothers how to make sandcastles. George uses his spade to squash Richard's sandcastle. Richard cries. Richard uses his spade to squash George's sandcastle. George cries. This game has not gone very well. George, what's your favorite thing in the whole playground? Asks Mommy Pig. Seesaw, shouts George. George sits on one end of the seesaw, but it needs someone on the other end. George wants to play on the seesaw too. Mommy Rabbit lifts Richard onto the seesaw. George and Richard go up and down on the seesaw. George and Richard are playing together, cheers Peppa. George likes Richard. Richard likes George. George and Richard like playing together. Pedro's cough. Peppa and her friends are waiting for Madame Gazelle to start their music lesson. Miss Polly had a dolly, sings Madame Gazelle. Cough, cough. What is that strange noise? Poor Pedro Pony has a nasty cough. Not to worry, says Madame Gazelle. I'll bring Dr. Brown Bear. Dr. Brown Bear looks after everyone when they are poorly. Dr. Brown Bear picks up his medical kit, jumps in his doctor's car, and drives straight to playgroup. I've got a cough, says Pedro when Dr. Bear arrives. It's nothing serious, says Dr. Brown Bear. But it may be catching, so we'll give you some medicine. Blech, cries Pedro. It tastes like an old shoe full of jam. Susie Sheep and Danny Dog start to cough too. As I thought, says Dr. Brown Bear, Pedro's cough is catching. He gives them both some cough medicine. Blech, taste of carpet-flavored yogurt, says Susie. Yuck, a taste of flowers, says Danny. Do you ever get ill, Dr. Brown Bear? Asks Peppa. I'm never ill because I ate an apple a day, says Dr. Brown Bear. Soon it is home time and the parents arrive to pick up the children. I've got a cough, says Pedro. Dr. Brown Bear came to look after us, says Danny. All the adults start coughing too. Cough, cough. Peppa picks up the phone. Dr. Brown Bear? Now all the grown-ups are ill, she says. Now it is the grown-ups' turn to take the cough medicine. Blech, it tastes like custard and old socks, cries Madame Gazelle. All the grown-ups must take the medicine to help them feel better. No one likes the medicine. Who looks after you when you're ill? Asks Peppa. No one looks after me, replies Dr. Brown Bear. I'm never... cough, cough. Dr. Brown Bear has caught Pedro's cough too. Who will look after Dr. Brown Bear? Guesses Peppa. Poor Dr. Brown Bear is taken to hospital. He has some visitors. Danny has brought some fruit. Susie has brought the medicine. Open wide, says Susie. That, cries Dr. Brown Bear. It tastes like jammy yogurt-flavored carpet shoe with flowery custard old socks. Soon, Dr. Brown Bear is feeling better. Everyone loves being looked after, even Dr. Brown Bear. Digging up the road. It is a lovely sunny day. Peppa and her family are driving to the playground. Is everyone ready? Asks Daddy Pig. Yes, shout Peppa and George. Then off we go, says Daddy Pig. Peppa and George love going to the playground. Oh dear, Daddy Pig has stopped the car. Why have we stopped? Asks Peppa. We're in a traffic jam, says Daddy Pig. George starts to cry. He wants to go to the playground. Don't worry, George, the traffic is moving now, says Daddy Pig. Stop, shouts Mr. Bull. Mr. Bull has stopped the traffic again. What's the problem, Mr. Bull? Asks Mommy Pig. Moo, we're digging up the road, shouts Mr. Bull. Look, says Peppa. There's water coming out of the ground. Yes, there's a broken pipe under the road and we're going to fix it, says Mr. Bull. Will it take long? Asks Mommy Pig. It will take as long as it takes, says Mr. Bull. First, Mr. Rhino digs a hole in the road with his digger. Digger, digger, cries George. George likes diggers. Next, Mr. Bull turns the water off, and a crane lifts out the old pipe. Then the crane puts in the new pipe. Crane, crane, cries George. George likes cranes. Thank you for showing us your work, Mr. Bull, says Mommy Pig. Moo, no problem, says Mr. Bull. Mr. Bull changed the traffic light to green, and off they go. Oh dear, George starts to cry again. He doesn't want to leave Mr. Bull. But we're going to the playground, George, says Peppa. You can play diggers and cranes in the sandpit, says Mommy Pig. And we'll see Mr. Bull again on our way home, adds Daddy Pig. George stops crying. He likes going to the playground, especially when he can play diggers and cranes in the sandpit with Richard Rabbit and Adam Elephant. Peppa and George have lots of fun at the playground. George, it's time to go, says Mommy Pig. George starts to cry again. He doesn't want to go home. Daddy Pig, Mommy Pig, Peppa, and George set off in their car. Moo, stop, shouts Mr. Bull. Is the water pipe broken again? Asks Peppa. No, this time it's a faulty electrical cable, says Mr. Bull. How do you mend the faulty clackery cable? Asks Peppa. We dig up the road, of course, says Mr. Bull. Hooray! Cheer Peppa and George. Everyone loves it when Mr. Bull digs up the road. Stamps. Grandpa Pig is showing Peppa and George his stamp collection. I think you must have every stamp ever, says Peppa. So there's no need to buy any more, is there, Grandpa Pig? Says Granny Pig, chuckling. Grandpa Pig doesn't answer. Mr. Zebra, the postman, arrives at Granny and Grandpa Pig's door. He's delivering the post to their house. It's the post, cries Peppa. Ah, it's a postcard from my friend, says Granny Pig. I've never had a postcard, says Peppa sadly. That's easy to fix, says Granny Pig. Come with me. Let's write one now. We can post it to you and George, says Granny Pig. Yes, please, Granny, cries Peppa. Together, they write a message on the postcard. Then they add Peppa and George's address. There's something missing, says Granny Pig. It needs a stamp too. Grandpa has stamps, cries Peppa. My stamps are not for licking and sticking on postcards, guesses Grandpa Pig. I think we'll find some normal stamps upstairs, says Granny Pig. Granny Pig, Peppa, and George go upstairs. Granny Pig opens up the desk drawers to look for the stamps. Peppa checks inside. No stamps here, Granny, says Peppa. Oh dear, we'll have to have another look downstairs, says Granny Pig. Look, Granny, a stamp for our postcard, says Peppa, finding a stamp on the table. I knew we would find a stamp somewhere, says Granny Pig. George, would you like to lick it? George licks the stamp and sticks it on the postcard. Now it's time to post your postcard, says Granny Pig. Granny Pig, Peppa, George walk to the red post box. Send it off, George, says Granny Pig. Peppa helps George post a postcard. Hee hee, says George. Did anyone see a stamp on the kitchen table? Asks Grandpa Pig, arriving at the post box. Yes, Grandpa, we stuck it on our postcard, says Peppa. Mr. Zebra has already collected the post. Grandpa Pig chases after him. Come back, my stamp, shouts Grandpa Pig. The stamp isn't lost. The postcard is going to Peppa and George's house, says Granny Pig. Grandpa Pig races there just in time to meet Mr. Zebra. Mr. Zebra jumps out of his van to deliver Peppa and George's post. Our postcard! Yippee! Cheers Peppa. The postcard has Grandpa Pig's collectible stamp on it. Would you like to keep it, Grandpa? Asks Peppa. Thank you, Peppa, says Grandpa Pig. This stamp was important before, but it's even more precious now that it's been posted to you. Foggy day. It is a lovely sunny day. Mommy and Daddy Pig are taking Peppa and George to the playground. We're going to the playground, sings Peppa. Suddenly, everyone is surrounded by thick gray clouds. Where has the sky gone? Guesses Peppa. Don't worry, Peppa, says Daddy Pig. It's only fog. What's fog? Asks Peppa. She has never seen fog before. Fog is a cloud that is on the ground instead of in the sky, explains Daddy Pig. The fog has made the playground disappear. Everything has disappeared. Maybe we should go back home, says Mommy Pig. Oh, sighs Peppa and George. Daddy Pig leads Peppa, George, and Mommy Pig back through the fog. It is very thick. Are we lost, Daddy Pig? Asks Mommy Pig. Ho ho, don't worry, I know exactly where we are, says Daddy Pig. This way. Soon, Peppa bumps into Miss Duck. Hello, Miss Duck, says Peppa. Are you lost too? Quack, replies Miss Duck. We're not lost, says Daddy Pig. I know exactly where we are. Our house is this way. Daddy Pig marches forward. Suddenly, there is a splash. Daddy Pig has fallen in the duck pond. That's lucky, Daddy, says Peppa. You found Miss Duck's pond. Yes, says Daddy Pig. What a stroke of luck. Now, let's find our house. I'm sure it's this way. Next, Peppa and George bump into Rebecca, Richard, and Mommy Rabbit. Hello, Peppa, says Rebecca. We want to go to the playground, but we're lost in the fog. So are we, says Peppa. We're not lost, Peppa, says Daddy Pig. Let's all go home until the fog clears. This way, everyone. Everyone follows Daddy Pig. Our house should be just about here, says Daddy Pig. Oh, I don't remember a letter in our garden. Daddy Pig climbs up to take a look. Can you see where we are? Asks Peppa. Yes, I can, shouts Daddy Pig. Why don't you come up? Peppa climbs to the top of the ladder. She is so high up that she can see over the clouds of fog. We're at the playground, cries Peppa. Hooray! Shout Rebecca, Richard, and George. Rebecca joins Peppa on the slide. The fog starts to clear away. Daddy Pig has led everyone to the playground after all. George and Richard play on the seesaw. Then Peppa and Rebecca have a go on the swings. Well, that's lucky, says Mommy Pig. But I thought we were trying to get home, Daddy Pig. Daddy Pig's face goes a little red. So did I. Maybe we did get a bit lost after all. Grandpa Pig's toy plane. Peppa and George are helping sort through a box of Granny Pig's old toys. This is the dolly I had when I was little, says Granny Pig. Peppa loves it, but Grandpa Pig isn't very interested. I can show you something really good, says Grandpa Pig. Come with me. We need to go to my shed, says Grandpa Pig. He leads Peppa, George, and Granny Pig down the hill into the garden. Peppa brings the dolly with her. Grandpa Pig rummages in his shed and brings out a toy airplane. Airplane, says George. George loves airplanes. Can it fly? Asks Peppa. Of course it flies, says Grandpa Pig. Grandpa Pig pulls the levers on his remote control and the plane takes off. It's the best little plane ever, Grandpa, cheers Peppa. But it would be better if it were bigger, says Grandpa Pig thoughtfully. Look after my dolly, please, Peppa, says Granny Pig. I'm going inside to get us all some nice fresh juice. While Granny Pig is gone, Grandpa Pig rushes into his shed. He wheels out a much larger toy plane. I made this bigger and better one, says Grandpa Pig. Wow, cries Peppa. It even has a cockpit for the pilot. Maybe Dolly would like to be the pilot, says Grandpa Pig. He takes the dolly and pops her into the cockpit. But Granny said I should look after Dolly, says Peppa. Dolly will be fine, says Grandpa Pig. The plane zooms up into the sky. Whoopee! Shouts Grandpa Pig. He presses the remote control and the toy plane begins a loop-the-loop in the air. But as the plane turns upside down, Dolly falls out. Dolly! Cries Peppa. Grandpa Pig keeps pulling the green lever on the remote control. No need to panic, he says nervously. The plane completes the loop and catches Dolly. Hooray! Cries Peppa. Let's try something even more exciting, says Grandpa Pig. The toy plane zooms towards the house. The plane flies through the open door. It flies over Granny Pig as she's looking in the fridge. What was that? Asks Granny Pig, but the toy plane is gone before she can spot it. Quick! Granny is on her way back, says Peppa. Grandpa Pig lands the toy plane on the grass. Juice for everyone, calls Granny Pig merrily. Perfect timing, says Grandpa Pig. George and Peppa love toy airplanes. Everyone loves toy airplanes. Grampy Rabbit's Lighthouse. Peppa, George, and Danny Dog are helping deliver supplies to Granddad Dog's friend Grampy Rabbit. Where does Grampy Rabbit live? Asks Peppa. Out at sea, on a rock, says Granddad Dog. On a rock? Says Peppa. They land at the lighthouse. Visitors! Exclaims Grampy Rabbit. I haven't had visitors in many a moon. I get lonely with just the sea and sky for company. How long have you been here? Asks Peppa. Since Tuesday, says Grampy Rabbit. I've got tales to tell, says Grampy Rabbit, if you'd like to hear. No thanks, says Granddad Dog quickly. Yes, please, reply Peppa and Danny. Grampy Rabbit starts to sing. I got up this morning, the sea was still there, so was the sky. The sea, the sky, the sea, the sky, Peppa and Danny join in. Why is your house called a lighthouse? Asks Peppa. I'll show you, says Grampy Rabbit. They climb a staircase to the very top of the lighthouse. It's called a lighthouse because it has this big light at the top, says Grampy Rabbit. It shines through the dark, helping sailors find their way. Grampy Rabbit takes out a megaphone, and when it's foggy, I use this foghorn. He says, "Fog!" "That's loud," cries Peppa. "No fog today, just sea and sky," says Grampy Rabbit sadly. "The stories I could tell." "No thanks," says Granddad Dog. "We must be going." Peppa, George, Danny, and Granddad Dog set off for home. It is now very dark. "Don't worry," says Granddad Dog. "The light from Grampy Rabbit's lighthouse will show us the way home." Grampy Rabbit is ready for bed, so turns the light out. He also turns the big light out. Granddad Dog phones Grampy Rabbit. "Could you turn the big light on again?" he asks. The big light shines again. "Hooray!" cry Peppa and Daddy. "It is getting foggy. I can't see the light anymore," says Peppa. Granddad Dog phones Grampy Rabbit. "It's us again," he says. "Can you sound the foghorn, please?" "Fog!" bellows Grampy Rabbit. "Fog!" Grampy Rabbit's voice is a foghorn. Thanks to Grampy Rabbit, they arrive back safe on land. Mommy Pig, Daddy Pig, and Miss Dog are waiting to take them home. "We went to a lighthouse," says Peppa excitedly. "Grampy Rabbit's lighthouse guided us home safely," says Granddad Dog. "Grampy Rabbit sang a song. Would you like to hear it?" asks Peppa. "No thanks," says Granddad Dog. "Yes, please," say the parents. Peppa and Danny sing. "I got up this morning, the sea was still there, so was the sky, the sea, the sky." Magic mirrors. There is a new mirror in Peppa and George's bathroom. George thinks there is another little pig in the room. "It's a mirror, George," says Mommy Pig. "You can see yourself in them because they are so shiny." This gives Peppa an idea. "Come on, George," she says. "Let's go and look for other shiny things." Peppa and George find Daddy Pig downstairs. "We're looking for shiny things to see ourselves in," says Peppa. "Why don't you look in these spoons?" suggests Daddy Pig. Daddy Pig gives Peppa and George a spoon each. They can see their faces in the spoons. "My face looks funny," says Peppa. "Now turn the spoon around," says Daddy Pig. "I'm upside down," cries Peppa. "How does that work, Daddy?" "It's simple," says Daddy Pig. "Concave surfaces reflect light waves inversely to their origin." Peppa looks confused. "Is it magic?" asks Peppa. "Yes," replies Daddy Pig. Peppa and George search for more shiny things. They meet Susie Sheep outside. "Look, Susie," says Peppa, showing Susie her spoon. "I can make you turn upside down." "Wow, how does it work?" asks Susie. "Magic," replies Peppa. Peppa, Susie, and George look for more magic things in the garden. They find a big muddy puddle. "I can see the sky," says Susie. Just then, Pedro Pony and Danny Dog arrive. "Did you drop something in the puddle?" asks Pedro. "No, we're looking at our reflections, just like a mirror," says Peppa. "I know where there are some really funny mirrors," says Danny. The children head to the fair. Roll up, cries Miss Rabbit. "Come and see my wobbly mirrors." Everyone goes inside Miss Rabbit's tent. Peppa and Susie look at their reflections in a funny-shaped mirror. "What's happened to my body?" asks Peppa, giggling at her wobbly reflection. Danny is looking in a different mirror. His face and body look very wide in this one. "I've gone all squishy," says Danny. George has found a mirror that makes him look huge. "Grrr," says George. He thinks he's as big as a dinosaur. Pedro's mirror is the strangest of all. Look at my neck, says Pedro. It's as long as giraffes. Why do we look different in each mirror, Daddy? Asks Peppa. It's very simple, says Daddy Pig. Illusions of optical differentials by convex. Everyone looks a bit confused. So it's magic? Says Susie. Daddy Pig smiles. Yes, it's magic, he replies. Outside the tent, Mommy Rabbit has brought her twins Rosie and Roby to see their auntie Miss Rabbit. Hello, sister, says Mommy Rabbit. How are you? I'm very good, sister, replies Miss Rabbit. Daddy Pig and all the children come out of the tent. It was amazing in there, says Daddy Pig. And the mirror out here is amazing too. I can see two of you. It must be magic. Silly Daddy, says Peppa. It's Miss Rabbit and Mommy Rabbit. We don't need a mirror, says Miss Rabbit, because we look so alike. Well, we're sisters, says Miss Rabbit and Mommy Rabbit together. Miss Rabbit's taxi. Peppa and George are at the supermarket with Mommy Pig. That's a lot of shopping, says Miss Rabbit at the checkout. It's for Grandpa, explains Peppa. Granny is going away on holiday. Daddy Pig is waiting outside. Where's the car? Asks Mommy Pig. I didn't bring the car, replies Daddy Pig. I didn't think you would be buying so much. I'll call for a taxi, says Mommy Pig. Ring, ring. Hello, taxi service, says Miss Rabbit. A taxi will be with you shortly. I see you've been shopping, says Miss Rabbit. Lots of shopping about these days. Shopping for this, shopping for that. Miss Rabbit, why are you talking so much? Asks Peppa. It's what taxi drivers do, Peppa, says Miss Rabbit. The taxi drives at Granny and Grandpa Pig's house. Daddy Pig takes the shopping inside. Granny Pig calls for a taxi to take her to the airport. Luckily, Miss Rabbit is still there. Daddy Pig, Peppa, and George go to the airport in Miss Rabbit's taxi with Granny Pig. Goodbye, my little ones, says Granny Pig. I'll be back soon. Mr. Wolf arrives on an airplane and gets in the taxi. How will we get home now? Asks Peppa. We'll have to call a taxi, says Daddy Pig. Miss Rabbit drives back to the airport to pick up Peppa, George, and Daddy Pig. On the way, she finds Mr. Bull standing in the middle of the road. Beep, beep. I'm supposed to be mending the airport, but my truck's broken down, complains Mr. Bull. I'm going to the airport, says Miss Rabbit. Have you got any luggage? Just the sand, replies Mr. Bull. Mr. Badger pulls a lever to pour sand from a tipper truck into the taxi. Miss Rabbit's taxi is full of sand. Miss Rabbit's taxi arrives at the airport. Here's the sand, says Mr. Bull to his workers, lifting up the front of the taxi. Now Miss Rabbit can drive Daddy Pig, Peppa, and George home. Then you can have a rest, says Daddy Pig. I should be so lucky, says Miss Rabbit. Miss Rabbit gets back to the supermarket. There's a long line of customers queuing up to pay. Sorry to have kept you waiting, says Miss Rabbit. It's just another busy day for Miss Rabbit. Mommy Pig's book. Mommy Pig is working on the computer. Please, can we play Happy Miss Chicken? Asks Peppa. Not until Mommy Pig has finished writing her book, says Daddy Pig. After lots of hard work, I've finished my book, says Mommy Pig. Hooray! Now we can play Happy Miss Chicken, says Peppa. Peppa and George take it in turns playing. Well done, George, says Peppa. Oh no, I forgot to save my work, says Mommy Pig. Phew, it's still there. Let me save it now. Save, close, send. Now it will be made into a real storybook. The next morning, Mommy Pig visits Peppa's playgroup. Thank you for coming to read your new book to us today, says Madame Gazelle. It's very exciting, says Mommy Pig. These books are so new, I haven't even opened one yet. Madame Gazelle tells the children they must listen politely. Then Mommy Pig begins. Once upon a time, there was an onion called Funny Onion, says Mommy Pig. She turns over the page, but the rest of the book is one big long number. That's not what I wrote, guesses Mommy Pig. It's George's Happy Miss Chicken high score, cries Peppa. Mommy Pig is sad that her Funny Onion story has been replaced with numbers. I'm sorry, children, but I can't read to you today, she says. Oh, the children sigh sadly. They want to hear about Funny Onion. Can you remember the story, Mommy Pig? Asks Madame Gazelle. Yes, says Mommy Pig. Then just tell us the rest, says Madame Gazelle. Okay, says Mommy Pig, closing the book and putting it down. Once upon a time, there was an onion called Funny Onion. All he wanted was to make people laugh, but he made people cry instead because he was an onion. I must learn how to be funny, said Funny Onion. I'll search the world to learn how to be funny, said Funny Onion. Then he met a tomato. The tomato said, we're a funny head. So Funny Onion wore a funny head, but still people cried. Next, Funny Onion met a banana. The banana said, wear some funny shoes. So Funny Onion wore some funny shoes, but still people cried. Funny Onion was ready to give up when he met a pineapple. What do you think the pineapple said? Mommy Pig asks the children. We're a red nose, suggests Susie Sheep. We're a purple wig, suggests Rebecca Rabbit. Very good, says Mommy Pig. But what the pineapple really said was, do something funny. Funny Onion did something funny and everyone laughed. The end. As the story ends, the mommies and daddies arrive to take the children home. I have your book, Dr. Elephant tells Mommy Pig. What did you mean by 453967? Mommy Pig doesn't tell him it's George's Happy Miss Chicken score. Everyone loves Mommy Pig's book. Peppa's school project. It's the end of the day at Peppa's playgroup. For your school project, I want you to go home and make a castle, says Madame Gazelle. Use your imagination and make it big and fantastic. Can we use glitter? Asks Susie Sheep. Not too much glitter. It gets everywhere, says Madame Gazelle. The next morning, Peppa is eating breakfast. I'm doing a school project, says Peppa. I need to make a castle. Stick these yogurt pots on the cereal box, says Daddy Pig. No, Daddy, it has to be good, says Peppa. Oh, I see, replies Daddy Pig. Over at Susie's house, Susie and Mommy Sheep are looking at the computer. Are you sure Madame Gazelle told you to make a real fairy palace? Asks Mommy Sheep. Yes, says Susie, with all the little fiddly beats. Right, says Mommy Sheep. I think I'll stay at home today. Back at Peppa's house, Peppa draws a picture of the castle she wants to make. But it needs to be big enough for me to live in, says Peppa. We need to find a big cardboard box then, says Mommy Pig. Just then, the doorbell rings. Ding dong. Mr. Zebra is at the door with the delivery. It's just a light bulb, says Daddy Pig, opening up the big box. Why do they use so much packaging? Shall I take the box away? Asks Mr. Zebra. No, shouts Peppa. We need it for my project. After Mr. Zebra leaves, Mommy and Daddy Pig start making Peppa's castle. Peppa calls Susie on the phone. How's your school project going? Asks Peppa. It's going very well, says Susie. Mommy Sheep puts a tower on the palace. It needs to be more pointy, Mommy, says Susie. How's your castle going? Asks Susie. It's hard work, says Peppa. But Mommy and Daddy are helping a teeny tiny bit. What do you think of this tower, Peppa? Asks Daddy Pig. It looks a bit cardboardy, says Peppa. I need to get on with my work now. Goodbye, Susie. Daddy Pig has painted Peppa's castle so it doesn't look cardboardy anymore. Says Peppa. It just needs one more thing. Glitter. No, not glitter, cries Daddy Pig. The next morning, Peppa and her friends have brought their castles to playgroup. Susie's fairy palace is very glittery. Wendy Wolf's castle is very glittery. Candy Cat's castle is very glittery. Emily Elephant's castle is very glittery. My castle is made out of a cardboard box and lots of glitter, says Peppa. It is a very fine castle, says Madame Gazelle, and so sparkly. Now, Madame Gazelle is very glittery. Peppa is very glittery. Even Mommy Pig is very glittery. Everyone is very glittery. Isn't it wonderful what children can make using just their imaginations? Says Madame Gazelle. And my castle is big enough for me to live in, says Peppa. Peppa loves school projects. Everyone loves school projects, especially glittery ones. Bubbles. Peppa and George are drinking orange juice. Look at all the tiny bubbles, says Peppa. Peppa wants to make bigger bubbles. Peppa and George blow through their straws. Bubble, says George. Peppa and George go into the garden to blow more bubbles. Dip the stick in the bubble mixture, Peppa tells George. Now take a big breath and blow. Peppa blows a big bubble. Next, it's George's turn, but he doesn't have enough breath to blow bubbles. Lift the sticks and wave it around, says Mommy Pig. Bubbles, says George. Now George can make bubbles too. Making bubbles is even more fun if you run along, says Daddy Pig. George runs, waving the wand to make a stream of bubbles. Wait for me, calls Peppa, chasing him. George is having fun making bubbles, and Peppa is having fun popping them. I love bubbles, cries Peppa. Peppa and George want to play with bubbles all day. Oh no, Peppa gasps. There's no more bubble mixture. I have an idea, says Daddy Pig. Mommy Pig, please bring me a bucket. Peppa, please bring me some washing up liquid. And George, please bring me my old tennis racket. Mommy Pig, Peppa, and George give everything to Daddy Pig. Daddy Pig fills the bucket with water. Then he adds the washing up liquid. Daddy Pig has made his own bubble mixture. Daddy Pig uses the racket as a giant bubble wand. Come on, everyone, Daddy Pig cries. Daddy Pig is making lots of bubbles as he runs. Don't sleep and fall, shouts Mommy Pig. I'll be fine, says Daddy Pig. But he's running very fast. Oh no, Daddy Pig has fallen over. Are you all right, Daddy Pig? Asks Mommy Pig. Yes, I'm fine, thank you. But I've spilled all my bubble mixture. I think it's gone up my nose, says Daddy Pig. The bubble mixture makes Daddy Pig sneeze. Achoo! Daddy, you've made the biggest bubble ever, cries Peppa. Wow, says everyone. But without the bubble mixture, we can't make any more bubbles, says Peppa sadly. I have an idea, says Mommy Pig. The spilled mixture has made a muddy puddle for us to jump in. The puddle is all bubbly, gasps Peppa. Everyone loves jumping up and down in muddy, bubbly puddles. Grampy Rabbit's Hovercraft. Grandpa Pig is taking Peppa and George out for the first time on his sailing boat. Hello, Old Bean, says Mr. Stallion. Grandpa, that man just called you an old bean, cries Peppa. It's another way of saying old friend, says Grandpa Pig. Now, where did I leave my boat? Says Grandpa Pig. What does your boat look like, Grandpa? Asks Peppa. It has a little red flag on top of the mast, says Grandpa Pig. Like that little flag? Asks Peppa. Oh dear, Grandpa Pig's sailing boat has sunk. Here is Grampy Rabbit on his hovercraft. Vroom! Grampy Rabbit zooms past the boats. What is that monstrosity? Asks Mr. Stallion. Is it allowed at the sailing club? Asks Miss Corgi. Grampy Rabbit reaches Peppa and George. Hello, shouts Grampy Rabbit. What a marvelous day for sailing. Hello, Grampy Rabbit, says Peppa. Grandpa Pig, you look sad, says Grampy Rabbit. What's the matter? We can't go sailing because our boat has sunk, says Peppa. Why don't you hop onto my hovercraft? Suggests Grampy Rabbit. You can't drive that thing around here, says Grandpa Pig. You're not a member of the sailing club. Well, you're a member, aren't you? Replies Grampy Rabbit. So I'm sure it will be perfectly fine. Peppa, George, and Grandpa Pig board Grampy Rabbit's hovercraft. Hold on to your hats, shouts Grampy Rabbit as they zoom across the sea. Grampy Rabbit's hovercraft can go on land and water. Mr. Stallion and Miss Corgi are enjoying a peaceful day sailing. Oh, what's that horrible noise? Cries Miss Corgi. It's the monstrosity again, says Mr. Stallion. Whoopee! Ha-ha! Says Grampy Rabbit. Grampy Rabbit stops off at the Sailing Club Cafe to get some juice. This is the life, huh? Says Grampy Rabbit. The sea and the sky and the boats sailing by. But the boats are not sailing by, Grampy Rabbit, says Peppa. There's no wind, says Grandpa Pig. Without wind, sailing boats can't sail. Suddenly, they hear voices calling for help. It's Mr. Stallion and Miss Corgi. We need to rescue them, Grampy Rabbit, says Peppa. Grampy Rabbit zooms towards the shouting. Are we there? He calls. We can't get back to the dock without the wind, says Miss Corgi. Toast me a line, and I will tow you back in, says Grampy Rabbit. Grampy Rabbit's hovercraft tows the sailing boats back to shore. We're towing the boats to shore, we're towing the boats to shore, sings Grampy Rabbit. We're towing the boats to the car park, towing the boats to be parked, sings Grampy Rabbit. Now you don't have so far to walk to your cars. But sailing boats don't go on land like hovercrafts, gasps Grandpa Pig. Grandpa Pig, who's your friend? Asks Mr. Stallion. We must thank him for rescuing us. His name is Grampy Rabbit, replies Grandpa Pig. Grampy Rabbit, delighted to meet you, Old Bean, says Mr. Stallion. You too, Old Bean, replies Grampy Rabbit. Grandpa Pig's boat. Grandpa Pig is taking Peppa and George out for a day on the river. I'm the captain of this boat, says Grandpa Pig. Granny Pig, Peppa, and George all salute Grandpa Pig. Aye, aye, Captain, they cry. When I tell you all to do something, you must do it. When I tell you all to do something, you must do it, says Grandpa Pig. Unless it is something silly, Granny Pig tells Peppa and George. Grandpa Pig frowns. The captain never says anything silly. Of course not, Captain, says Granny Pig, saluting. Everyone does what Grandpa Pig says. He asks George to raise the flag and Granny Pig to take the wheel. Then Grandpa Pig tells Peppa to ring the bell. Ding, ding. Off they go. The boat speeds through the water. Granny Pig thinks they should go a bit slower. Good idea, Granny Pig, says Grandpa Pig. I don't want to use up all my petrol. Peppa spots another boat. It's Granddad Dog. He's taking Danny Dog out for a day on the river. Granddad Dog is Grandpa Pig's very best friend. Ho, ho, I'm surprised your boat is still afloat, Granddad Dog. It must be almost as old as you are, says Grandpa Pig. Woof! This old boat can go faster than your rusty bucket any day, replies Granddad Dog. Grandpa Pig is not happy. He calls Granddad Dog a sea dog. Granddad Dog calls Grandpa Pig a water hog. You are both acting like little children, cries Granny Pig. Peppa and George think this is funny. Grandpa Pig won't say sorry. Granddad Dog won't say sorry. They decide to race instead. Granddad Dog zooms off. Catch me if you can, water hog, says Granddad Dog. Grandpa Pig is not happy. Sea dog, shouts Grandpa Pig. Grandpa Pig overtakes Granddad Dog and leaves him far behind. Can't catch me, ha ha ha, says Grandpa Pig. I win. Oh no, my boat has run out of petrol, cries Grandpa Pig. Maybe I did go a bit too fast. Maybe Granddad Dog can tow us home, suggests Granny Pig. I do not want him to, says Grandpa Pig. Will you two ever grow up? Sighs Granny Pig. Grandpa, say sorry to Granddad Dog, says Peppa. Granddad, say sorry to Grandpa Pig, says Danny. Finally, they both say sorry. Granddad Dog is Grandpa Pig's very best friend. Granddad Dog tows Grandpa Pig's boat home. The main thing is I won the race, Grandpa Pig says to Peppa. Grandpa Pig, cries Granny Pig. Silly Grandpa Pig. George's birthday. It's George's birthday. Mommy Pig hands George a box wrapped in green paper. Happy birthday, George, she says. Dinosaur, cries George, pulling out a purple dinosaur. I knew it would be a dinosaur thing, says Peppa. George waves the toy dinosaur at Peppa. Girl, too scary, cries Peppa. Peppa has painted a card for George. I was going to paint a flower, says Peppa. But George does not like flowers, so in the end I painted a dinosaur, cries George. Mommy Pig tells George that they are going somewhere very special for his birthday treat. Yippee, shouts Peppa. Where are we going? You will see, says Daddy Pig. George's birthday treat is a visit to the dinosaur room at the museum. George loves dinosaurs. They are his favorite thing in the whole world. Not silly old dinosaurs again, grunts Peppa. George stops in front of a big green dinosaur. He is standing on a yellow cross. There's a beep and then, rah! George jumps and begins to cry. Ah. It's not real, George, says Mommy Pig. Don't be frightened. It's just a robot, says Daddy Pig. Growl, shouts George at the Robo-Dino. And there's another surprise, says Mommy Pig. All of Peppa and George's friends are here. Happy birthday, George, says everyone. Mommy Rabbit has made a delicious birthday cake for George. I knew it would be a dinosaur cake, says Peppa. Mommy Rabbit laughs. What an amazing guess, Peppa. It's time for one last surprise, says Daddy Pig. Can you guess what it is? Something to do with dinosaurs, says Peppa. Everybody runs outside to see. It's a bouncy castle in the shape of a dinosaur. A bouncy dinosaur. George loves bouncy dinosaurs, and so does Peppa. Doctors. It is playtime. Peppa and Pedro Pony are playing in the garden when they hear a squeak from up in a tree. What's that noise? Asks Pedro. He looks up and guesses. It's Tiddles the tortoise. Don't worry, Tiddles. We can get you down. I'll just shake this tree and... Whoosh! Tiddles falls from the tree and bumps Pedro's nose on his way down. Ouch! Shouts Pedro. Madame Gazelle comes to help. Oh dear, what happened? She asks. Tiddles fell on Pedro's nose, says Peppa. Madame Gazelle calls the doctor. Dr. Brown Bear hurries over. Hello, where's the patient? He asks. Here, my nose hurts, says Pedro. Dr. Brown Bear gives Pedro a green plaster for his nose. That will make it better, says Dr. Brown Bear. My glasses fell in the mud, says Pedro. You'll need an optician to fix them, says Dr. Brown Bear. The optician arrives. It is Dr. Pony. He's Pedro's daddy. Can you please read this chart for me, Pedro? Says Dr. Pony. I can't see. My glasses aren't working, says Pedro. Dr. Pony spots the problem. These glasses just need a good clean, says Dr. Pony. He carefully wipes away the mud and gives the clean glasses back to Pedro. I can see again, says Pedro. Thank you, doctors. Everything is back to normal, says Madame Gazelle. But Tiddles needs helping too, cries Peppa. Can you doctors help a tortoise in trouble? Asks Madame Gazelle. I'm afraid not, but we know someone who can, replies Dr. Pony. I'll call them now. Dr. Hamster, the vet, arrives. Tiddles fell out of the tree, Pedro tells Dr. Hamster. Tiddles, you little pickle, says Dr. Hamster. She flips him over so that he can stand up again. All of a sudden, Dr. Elephant, the dentist, appears. Hello, I heard there was an emergency. Are everyone's teeth okay? He asks. Yes, thank you, everyone answers. Dr. Elephant sets off on his way. My car won't start, cries Dr. Elephant. None of the doctors know what to do. I know who to call, says Madame Gazelle. Granddad Dog's breakdown service. Granddad Dog arrives. He opens up the car bonnet and has a look. Right, now try the engine, he says. Vroom, vroom. Dr. Elephant's car has been fixed. Granddad Dog is a car doctor, cheers Peppa. There are doctors for everything, even cars. Everyone loves doctors. George's woolly hat. Peppa and George are spending the day at Granny and Grandpa Pig's house. George is wearing a new woolly hat. Don't get your new hat muddy, George, says Mommy Pig. We promise not to get George's hat muddy, says Grandpa Pig. Peppa and George are playing in the garden. It is a very windy day. Hold on to your head, says Peppa. Wah! Cries George as his head sails up into the sky. Catch it, George, shouts Peppa. George chases his woolly hat right through the mud. George, you are all muddy, cries Peppa. But George's hat is still clean. The wind blows his woolly hat across the garden. Oh no, George's woolly hat is caught in a tree. I'll get it down for you, says Peppa. Grandpa Pig and George watch as Peppa climbs up the tree. Perhaps I should help, says Grandpa Pig. Whoops, cries Peppa. Poor Peppa has fallen from the tree and landed in the mud. I see two little piggies who need a bath, says Grandpa Pig. Next, George's hat blows onto some reeds in the pond. Luckily, your head is still clean, George, says Grandpa Pig. He grabs a stick and reaches across the pond. Don't fall in, says Peppa. I know what I'm doing, Peppa, replies Grandpa Pig. Splash! Grandpa Pig falls into the pond. That was a silly thing to do, says Granny Pig. We were trying to get George's hat back, Granny, says Peppa. Where's George's woolly hat now? Asks Granny Pig. Granny Pig spots the hat. It has landed on a spade on a pile of stinky manure. If you walk on that manure, you will sink, warns Grandpa Pig. Hush, Grandpa Pig, I have no intention of sinking, says Granny Pig, laughing. Carefully, Granny Pig climbs over the manure until she reaches the woolly hat. Got it, she cheers, but then... Granny Pig falls over and lands in the heap of stinky manure. Ooh, smelly, Granny, says Peppa. Grandpa Pig, Peppa, and George start to giggle. Mommy Pig arrives to collect Peppa and George. You promised not to let the children get muddy, cries Mommy Pig. Actually, we promised not to let George's hat get muddy, says Grandpa Pig. George's hat is the only clean thing, says Mommy Pig. The fire engine. Mommy Pig is going to the mommy's fire engine practice. That's just a good excuse for a cup of tea and a chat, says Daddy Pig. I'm meeting with the Daddy's football team and having a barbecue. That's just a lot of grown-up boys kicking a football around, says Mommy Pig. Mommy, can we see the fire engine? Asks Peppa. Hee hee, fire engine, says George. Yes, Peppa, I'll take you and George, says Mommy Pig. Mommy Pig drives Peppa and George to Miss Rabbit's fire station. Hello, Peppa and George, says Miss Rabbit. Come and see the fire engine. There's a ladder for climbing, says Miss Rabbit, a hose for squirting water, and a big bell to ring. Miss Rabbit takes them into the control room to look for fires. Peppa spots a red phone and picks it up. Peppa, that's the fire phone, says Miss Rabbit. It's only to be used when there is a fire. Peppa puts the phone down. Suddenly, the red phone rings. Miss Rabbit panics. Fire station, where's the fire? Says Miss Rabbit. Can I speak to Mommy Pig, please? Asks Daddy Pig. It's an emergency. I can't find the tomato ketchup anywhere. Miss Rabbit puts the phone down. How many fires have you actually put out, Miss Rabbit? Asks Mommy Pig. None, replies Miss Rabbit. Not one fire, but you've got to be ready. The red phone rings again. Hello, Daddy Pig, says Miss Rabbit. This phone is only to be used when there is a... Fire! Shouts Daddy Pig. Oh dear, Daddy Pig's barbecue is on fire. Mommy's to the rescue, says Miss Rabbit. Miss Rabbit slides down the pole to the fire engine. All the mommies slide down the pole. Peppa and George hold tight and slide down the pole too. They all get into the fire engine. Miss Rabbit puts on the siren and drives them to Peppa's house. Nee-na, nee-na. The fire engine arrives at Peppa's house. Stand back, daddies, shouts Miss Rabbit. Mommy Pig and Mommy Sheep hose down the barbecue. The fire is out. Thank you for saving us, Miss Rabbit, says Daddy Pig. No problem, it's all part of the service, says Miss Rabbit. The mommy's fire engine's service, says Mommy Pig. And now that Miss Rabbit has kindly floated our garden, says Daddy Pig, we can all jump up and down in muddy puddles. I love fire engines, says Peppa, especially when they make muddy puddles. Babysitting. Mommy and Daddy Pig are going out for the evening. Granny and Grandpa Pig are babysitting Peppa and George. Granny Pig, Grandpa Pig, says Peppa happily. Granny, baby, George joins in. Good night, says Daddy Pig. Good night, says Mommy Pig. Now go to sleep quickly. What little darlings, says Granny Pig, so well behaved. Peppa yawns and Daddy Pig switches off the bedroom light. Mommy and Daddy Pig leave for their evening out. Inside the house, Grandpa and Granny Pig sit down on the sofa. They share a tasty pizza. This babysitting is easy, says Grandpa Pig. In the bedroom, Peppa does not want to go to sleep. George, are you awake? She whispers. George grunts excitedly. Peppa laughs. She climbs down the bunk bed ladder and switches on the bedroom light. George picks up a spotted ball and bounces it to Peppa. She bounces it back. They both giggle. Soon they are toys all over the floor. It is so hard to go to sleep when playing is much more fun. Grandpa and Granny Pig are watching TV. Peppa and George come downstairs to the living room. George and I are not sleepy at all, says Peppa. Can we watch TV with you? I suppose watching a little TV might make you sleepy, says Granny Pig. The TV show is about gardening. This program is very boring, says Peppa, yawning. She suggests playing a game instead. Grandpa, can you throw us up and catch us? Asks Peppa. Okay, but just one turn each, says Grandpa Pig. Peppa laughs as Grandpa Pig throws her in the air, then catches her. Phew, you seem heavier than before, says Grandpa Pig. Now it's George's turn, says Grandpa Pig. George loves feeling like he's flying. Higher, higher, shouts George as Grandpa Pig starts to wheeze. Maybe Grandpa Pig is a bit tired, says Granny Pig. Granny, let's play, says Peppa. You're it. Peppa taps Granny Pig on the nose. Granny Pig chases Peppa, George, and Grandpa Pig around the sofa. I'm going to catch you, she cries. Everyone runs and giggles. Later, Mommy and Daddy Pig arrive back home. I hope our little piggies are asleep, says Mommy Pig. Peppa, George, Grandpa Pig, and Granny Pig are all snoring on the sofa. The little piggies are asleep, whispers Daddy Pig, and so are the big piggies. Pretend friend. Susie Sheep has come to Peppa's house to play. Susie has brought her new friend, Leo Lion, but Peppa can't see Leo anywhere. He's a pretend friend, Susie explains. That means he's invisible. Oh, says Peppa. Would Leo like to be my friend too? Rah, says Susie. That means yes. Mommy Pig has cut 2 slices of fruitcake for Peppa and Susie. Don't forget about Leo, says Peppa. Mommy Pig doesn't know who Leo is. He's Susie's pretend friend, explains Peppa. Mommy Pig gets an extra chair and a plate for Leo, then asks if he would like some fruitcake. Rah, yes, says Peppa, giggling. Mommy Pig gets an extra chair and a plate for Leo, then asks if he would like some fruitcake. Rah, yes, says Peppa, giggling. Don't be silly, Peppa, that was you, says Susie. Leo doesn't like fruitcake. Leo would like to play dressing up now, says Susie. Peppa dresses up as a fairy and Susie makes a wish that she could be a queen. If you are a queen, Leo could be the jester, says Peppa. Susie doesn't like that idea. Leo is a king, Peppa, she says. I hear you have a special visitor, Peppa, says Daddy Pig. It's only Susie, Daddy, says Peppa. Don't forget about Leo, says Susie. King Leo Lion. Daddy Pig bows to King Leo. Daddy Pig is pleased to meet a king. What a fine mane you have, Leo, says Daddy Pig. Yes, and he's wearing his best red trousers, adds Susie, and his special blue shirt, adds Peppa. His shirt is yellow, not blue, says Susie. Peppa and Susie's friends have come round to jump in muddy puddles. Mommy Pig tells everyone to put on their willy boots. Everyone has so much fun splashing in the puddles. What about Leo? Calls Daddy Pig. Are you sure he should be in those muddy puddles without his boots? Luckily, Papa's old boots fit Leo perfectly. His paws get so muddy, says Susie. Everyone loves jumping in muddy puddles, even pretend friends. Mommy Pig's blackberries. Peppa and her family are visiting Granny and Grandpa Pig. Granny Pig is going to make a delicious apple and blackberry crumble. I need some brave explorers to go and get the fruit, says Granny Pig. Aye, aye, Granny Pig, everyone replies. First, we need to pick the apples, says Mommy Pig. That's the easy bit, says Grandpa Pig. On the count of 3, shake the tree. 1, 2, 3. Mommy Pig, Daddy Pig, Peppa, and George all shake the tree. Apples fall from the branches. Peppa and George catch them in their baskets as they fall. This is fun, says Peppa. Now it's time to collect the blackberries, says Mommy Pig. Why can't we just have an apple crumble? Asks Grandpa Pig. Because blackberries are tasty too, says Mommy Pig, leading everyone to a gigantic blackberry bush. This bush has been here since I was a little piggy. Ouch, cries George. He has pricked himself on one of the thorns. Careful, George, you might get tangled, says Grandpa Pig. I use a stick for picking hard-to-reach blackberries. Grandpa Pig uses his stick to pull down the branches that are hard to reach. Mommy Pig climbs her ladder. The best blackberries are right at the very top of the bush, she says. Don't lean too far over, says Daddy Pig. Don't worry, says Mommy Pig. I've been climbing this blackberry bush since I was a little girl. Mommy Pig stretches as far as she can to reach the juiciest blackberries. Whoops, she cries. Mommy Pig has fallen into the blackberry bush and can't get out. Just then, Susie Sheep arrives. Hello, Peppa, says Susie. Hello, Susie, says Peppa. My mommy is stuck in the blackberry bush. She's just like Sleeping Beauty, says Susie. I know that story, cries Peppa. There was once a princess called Sleeping Beauty, begins Peppa. One day she fell asleep in a thorny bush and stayed there for 100 years. That's a nice story, Peppa, says Mommy Pig. But can someone think of a way to get me out of here? Daddy Pig uses Grandpa Pig's pruners to cut the blackberry bush. Daddy Pig has rescued Mommy Pig. My prince, says Mommy Pig. Mommy is a blackberry bush, says Peppa, giggling. Everyone picks the blackberries from Mommy Pig and heads back to Granny and Grandpa Pig's house. Granny, says Peppa excitedly, Mommy got stuck in a blackberry bush and Daddy rescued her. I don't want to see another blackberries in my life, says Mommy Pig. So you don't want any apple and blackberry crumble then? Asks Granny Pig. Maybe just a little, says Mommy Pig.